Guten Erev Shabbos, Guten Erev Yom Tov. We'll start off since it's during the day, so you can say a bit of Tilim. Start off with a second bit of Chof.
Excuse me, Diane, you sound like you've got a frog in your throat. It's not clear.
Any better now?
Excellent, better, thank you.
Okay, so we'll say Kapitel Chof, and then we'll put in some tzedakah, and then we'll start the shir. And when yes, Yitzchak ben Hinda Malka, B'Sech Sh'achar Yisrael. ונצליח מזמן דוד יען כבר דמי ביים סורס, הגב חושם אלוהי יעקב, משלח עזר כל מקודש, ויציון יסודקו, יזכה כל מפסחו, ונוס בידף נסלו, ייתן לכו חן ובובכו, ורסוס בימלי, רננו בשבוסכו בשם אלוהינו נתגר, למלי על אלוהי כל משלסכו. עתי ידעתי, כי ראשי עני ישיחו, יענהו ושמי קודשו, בתמוס יצא ימנו. אלה בורכב ואלה הסוסים, אנחנו בשם אדוני אלוהים נזכר, הימו קוראו ונפלו, אנחנו קמנו וניס עדוד, אדוני ישיע המלך יעננו ויין קראנו. Dr. Rebbe would always encourage before Shabbos and Yom Tov, get extra stuff to make up for the days that you can be able to give the darkness Okay, let's go. So our first question which we have today, I want to revert back. Revert back to what we had the discussion last year about why when we break by yachat, why the smaller piece is kept for the mitzvah min haTorah, and why the larger piece is put for afikoimon, which is a in Rabbanon. And I had various responses, but then I managed to get hold of a new Haggadah with the Rebbe's collection of the Rebbe's Sichos, and the beer is called Divrei Menachem. So I'm just going to show you here on the screen. Why by yachat? So he says we've got two parts of the matzah. Let's put the place here. You break the matzah into two parts. So you've got here a matzah which has got two functions, two opposite functions. You have the smaller piece, which is lachma anya, which is bread of poverty. And the large piece is afikoimin, which is Pesach, which is chayrus, which is the idea of liberty. And the Korban Pesach has to be eaten al hasoiva, which is like wealthy, affluent. And so you have idea min hametzar el hamercha. In hametzar karosi, anoni v'amercha. I call from the straits, and Hashem responds in an abundant and a lavish way. So here you have this matzah, and you start with saying hey lachma anya, and from this poverty, then there is the large portion which alludes to the geula. At the moment, the geula is not revealed, and therefore the large piece, which is the geula piece, is concealed between the cushions. However, even now at this moment, when we are feeling small, but we have already it's already existing the tachlis hagadlus, which will be the greatness, which will be in the geula. So this is basically the Rebbe's answer, that the small piece, which is because is lechem oini, and therefore it's a small piece. The large piece relating to the afikoimin is relating to chayrus. Therefore, we put the large piece for the afikoimin. Let's move on. Also, I had some feedback from Geman from Brazil. Avi Ashkenazi sent me some ha'oris, which he listens to the recordings. So he sent the following. We had the discussion what happens when you have a Sheva Brachas on Atsuda Shlishis. So here he quotes from he sent me a copy. I don't have the sefer itself. It's a sefer called Hachonos L'Nisuin, I think, from someone, Hachonos L'Chasna, by someone called David Kratz. It's very much a contemporary sefer. And he writes the following in the name of Eli Landa. What you would do is that you'd have 2 cups of wine, as you do always by a Sheva Brachas, and you'd use one for benching. That means the one who's leading the benching would hold that one. The second cup is used for the other 6 brachas. And then normally the one who leads the benching would make hagofen at the end of the 6 brachas. He doesn't. We cover both cups of wine, I guess because of Gilui, and then leave them, safely covered. Daven Ma'ariv. After Ma'ariv, the chosen makes Havdalah on the cup from Birchas Hamazon. And then he makes Havdalah on the cup of benching, and then they take from like this. They take from the cup from the Sheva Brachas, they give to the Kala. So the Chosen makes, there's 2 cups of wine. The Chosen of benching, the Chosen now uses for Havdalah. They give the Kala from the other cup, which is not used for Havdalah, because because there's a minig and a diuk that women, one doesn't normally give them from the wine of Havdalah. Meanwhile, the Chosen, he's drunk from the first cup, and then he says we add from the second cup, in other words, the benching cup to the Sheva Brachas cup to the benching cup, and the Chosen now drinks from the Sheva Brachas cup also. And then he says, then you can distribute to the kohol. So now I asked the question, why? It's very complicated, huh? I asked the question, why Dafka the Chosen has to make Havdalah? Let anyone make Havdalah, and then the Chosen will drink from the Havdalah cup, and the Kala will drink from the other cup. So, possibly, in Eretz Yisrael, they're quite. I haven't seen this so much here in England, but in Eretz Yisrael, I know first the Shabbos of Sheva Brachas, the Chosen has to make Havdalah. They have also a minhag of Arten Hanzacher. I've seen it. It's so strange to me. I heard it's a standard thing. The Chosen makes Havdalah, and the family are standing there and throwing towel, and it's like answer simple. Call upon him. So this is where he's describing. So why would the Chosen make Havdalah rather than anyone else? Because normally one doesn't share the cost of Havdalah to other people. Kiddush, we share the cost of Bracha. By Havdalah, we don't share the cost of Bracha. So therefore, for someone else to make Havdalah, the Chosen should drink. Is a little bit interesting. So bottom line is that this is the Seder that by a Sheva Brachas you'd have, which is at Shabbos Shuddis. So then after benching, 6 brachas are said. The 7th bracha on the Hagofen is not said. That's left. That both cups are left till after Ma'ariv, and said the Chosen will make Havdalah on that cup of wine, and the Kala will have the second cup. After the Kala has drunk from the second cup, then we'll give back the Chosen, and he will have mixed up from both cups. The Abishas will help, and we should have reason to have these shilas.
Diane, your sound is getting worse.
We should have chasanas, and we should have these shilas. So this is where this is just a plug for a recent initiative. This is a local of Tzvi Mitz, Baruch Hashem, in 22 weeks. Last 23 weeks, has managed to put together 21 shidduchim. That's Givaldic, and so just a plug for that. Whoever needs, very happy to help. You've got the number there. The number will come up soon again. Let's move on. Okay, so now here becomes another question about making a chasana on Lag B'Omer. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, much better. Thank you.
Okay. Right. So now question about Lag BaOmer. As just part of the interesting kvias this year is that Lag BaOmer is on a Friday. And because of lockdown, there has been a backlog of chasanas. And so people are looking to make a chasana Lag BaOmer. But because it's on Friday, it does make it a little bit tight. And so the question is, can you make a chasana on Thursday night? Now, I would like to just throw in something. Historically, it was very common to make chasnas on Friday. Two things. Number one, the Ramo, Moshe Isserles, he was the Rav in Krakow, and he has a tshuva that someone asked how come there was a chasana and it overflowed into Friday night, and he officiated at a Chuppah Friday. It was ready after Shkia. And they asked, how can you do that? You're not allowed to do kinyonim on Shabbos. You're not allowed to make chasnas on Shabbos. The story was there that there was an orphan, a girl who was an orphan, and then there was a dispute because the uncle who had promised the dowry and then had pulled out the last minute, and the chassan said, I'm not going to the chasna without the dowry being sorted. And so the Ramo, who was officiating, he had to kind of negotiate to get this. And he says that it was very important for him that the chasna should happen now and not to be delayed because embarrassment, etc. And who knows whether it would materialize. So he says that sometimes he has 6 chasnas on a Friday. And it's not the first time, he says. He admits it's not the first time I've had a chuppah which happened already Friday night. And he explains, he justifies his course of action. Now, having said that, and I said that was in Krakow, I'm sure many of you are familiar with the story of a Kohen who was a Hefker person, and he insisted that the Rav should be Masada Kedushin, and he got the local governor to force the Rav to officiate. I've forgotten his name now. The name it's well recorded it was in Talks and Tales. I have the story. And the Rav was forced to officiate.
Sigmund something or other.
Seligman or something, yeah? Something like that. Sigmund, whatever. So that's, yes, a well-known story. And the Rav was mechuyev to officiate. And then as it happens on the Friday afternoon, the earth, as it happens, the earth opens up and the bride and groom are swallowed in the earth. And afterwards, the governor realizes how the Rav is such a saintly man, and this terrible thing happened, and he apologized, and he says, "What can I do to rectify?" And the Rav said to him that we have now a problem. We have now a grave site in a town square, and for Kohanim that's going to be a problem. So he asked for a favor that the governor should build a wall. Now, I've never been to Krakow, but I heard Reb Lozit Kalman Tiefenberg's mother, Shendel, her name was, so she, Enkel of Reb Melech, so she was born in Krakow, and she would say that before she remembers as a child, there was this site in the center of Krakow with the wall around it, where there was, and after that, Meiser, they made a takon in Krakow not to make weddings on Fridays. So in the times of the Ramo, it was about 400 years ago, weddings were done on Fridays. After that, Meiser, apparently they stopped it in Krakow. Okay. Now, I'm now going to read a couple of letters of the Rebbe. One letter. So on the right of the screen, you're writing about the svara to make a chasana on Thursday night, the eve of Friday, which is Lag BaOmer. You want to dafke make a chasana Lag BaOmer? There's discussion in Shulchan Aruch whether the celebration of Lag BaOmer starts the night before or it starts only from daybreak. Therefore, to avoid this machlokes, we make the chasana on the Yom Vov, but not beleil oil Yom Vov, but not on Thursday night. You shouldn't make a chasana on Thursday night, which is the eve of Lag BaOmer. So that's the letter in Chelik Ches of Igris Kodesh. There seems to have been later that some people did make chasanas and on the eve of Lag BaOmer. And on the left of your screen, you see that in the Hiskashrus, they are based upon a Sicha in Tovshin Memtes, where the Rebbe seems to relate to weddings which took place on the eve of Lag Baimer. And that wasn't a kvias like this year. It was actually Lag Baimer was then on a Tuesday, and it looks like the chasnas were taking place on a Monday evening, and it seems to have been okay. So they suggest there that that was because in earlier years we were more careful about when we make chasnas, because let's say the second half of the month we wouldn't make a chasna, etc. And afterwards, because of pressure of shortage of slots at halls, it became that we make chasnas in the second half of the month. Also, Chabad and other circles also it's become accepted. So perhaps therefore it's also become okay to make a chasna the eve of Lag Baimer. But then actually there's a fellow Talmud Chochem by the name of Reb Menachem Vahaba. He put together a sefer called Minhagim and Hanhagis, and he got on the case to find out who was it who got married on Lag Baimer Tov Mem Tes. He did some detective work, and he came up with who it was, and I know the name. The point was that this was not a Lubavitcher Bocher in the full sense of the word. It was for Lubavitcher family to a degree. The Chasna wasn't in 770. The Masada Kedushim was above Ron Pam, the Rosh Hashiva Torah Vadas. So the fact that the Chasna took place on the eve of Lag Baimer is lav dafka that was the with the Haskoma of the Rebbe, etc. He was there the day before the Chasna. He was there in 770, and but it doesn't mean that the Rebbe gave it okay to make, especially as mentioned last night we learned in the Shir. It's all very well to talk about making a chasna after nightfall. So to make Thursday night after nightfall to make a chasna, no, is negotiable. But to make a chasna at 7:30, 8 o'clock, which the sun is still shining, it's not even Leil Lag Baimer yet. So there doesn't seem to be proper grounds for that. In Eretz Yisrael, or perhaps now Los Angeles, perhaps there is the days are shorter, the nights start earlier. Perhaps it's possible, but in parts of the world like where we are, to make a chasna on Thursday in this year would be too early. Okay, let's move on. So now spot the difference between this ad and the previous one. This time you've got two telephone numbers instead of just the one. So in case one is engaged, no apologies for the pun. So then go into the next one. Okay. Now, on this Erev Yom Tov, so someone contacted me. Can they on Shabbos? He lives within an Erev. Can they on Shabbos go around and to the houses and give a shmura matzah? The Rebbe made a big mitzvah of distributing shmura matzah. So then here you have an opportunity. You got a long Shabbos. You davened early and you ate your meal early, so you have a whole afternoon. You can go and knock on doors and give out shmura matzah. So I was on a group discussion of a number of rabbonim earlier on, so I didn't look into it on Erev Yom Tov Mamish because I'd looked into it earlier, and there was the obvious question is hachana of preparing on Shabbos for after Shabbos. So here we have in Hilchas Sukkah. So it says in the Ramah, "V'osur lahochin b'Yom Tov l'tzoyrich leil Yom Tov." You're not allowed to prepare on Yom Tov Shirishin for the evening, but therefore you're not allowed to set up the tables in the house. You've been a whole sukkah, you've been in the sukkah. Now to bring the tables in the house and set them up so that it should be ready for the kiddush, for the Simchas Torah kiddush by night, or in your house for your meal, so that you wouldn't be allowed to on Shmini Atzeres afternoon to prepare for the meal by night. And here you have in the Sharet Shuvah. Now this is the Sharet Shuvah is in the dinim of Kriyas HaMegillah, and he says there about not bringing the Megillah on Shabbos within the Erev, not to bring the Megillah from your house to the shul. I would say no. I would say and the Sharet Shuvah cross-references us to Siman Tov Reish Samach Zayin. So we've got here not to prepare the tables from one day to the other, not to bring a Megillah on Shabbos from Motzei Shabbos. So then But then we go a little bit further. We have in Tovshin Lamed Zayin. Tovshin Lamed Zayin was the same Kvius as this year. And so here we have a diary from Tovshin Lamed Zayin by the Rebbe. Shachris, they daven at 6:45. It says which Sefer Torah they took out, and they sang Hu Elokeinu at 5:30, I guess, p.m. The Rebbe comes back for Mincha, and Gan Eden HaTachten, outside the Rebbe's room, there's a big crowd. It's 5:30 on Shabbos afternoon, Erev Pesach. The people there standing to get matzah. And they wanted to get matzah eshed after Ma'ariv, but they were ready, they were waiting. The Rebbe looked at them seriously. They davened mincha downstairs. Then, it says the Rebbe came to the Zal, and he turns around to Rabbi Binyamin Klein, and he says, what are they standing here for? It's toch asur. Shabbos, you're not allowed to distribute matzahs. Umiyad hispaka chavila. So the crowd dispersed right away. So the Rebbe took exception that they were even waiting for Chalukas HaMatzis on Shabbos, and certainly he wouldn't give out matzahs on Shabbos for Matzah Shabbos because of Hachonah. I also remember just when I was just before my bar mitzvah, so I was standing by the Rebbe's Farbrengen. I was there Shabbos Chanukah or Shabbos between Yutes Kislev and Chanukah, I don't remember. And I was called over. The Rebbe says the bar mitzvah from London, and the Rebbe gave me l'chaim, and he says "Als vanan de telen al bissel do, on a bissel in London," or whatever the words were exactly. But that was the standard thing when the Rebbe gave out mashke for people who had forthcoming events. So, and it was on Shabbos, so he would always tell them that they should distribute a bit of the mashke here by the Farbrengen, and then the rest they'll distribute at the event, for the simple reason that it shouldn't be a question of Hachonah mi Shabbos l'chayil. And therefore, I think it's a fairly straightforward thing not to do efforts on Shabbos to prepare for after Shabbos. I think it's a straightforward thing. Although some people have had issues about it, but I think it's a straightforward halacha. Someone's putting on the chat, is there an issue continuing the Simcha Lag B'Omer parties after Nacht at the conclusion of Lag B'Omer? There is an issue about this, and when there's a chasana, also I've seen in the various forum, some say that the festivities should be wound up by Nacht. The Poil, I don't think that's the minhag. As far as I know, that generally people, once they've started the chasana, they're not going to stop it at Nacht because it started beheter. But there are, if it's something which is summer party, not a chasana, perhaps one shouldn't be so liberal about it. Let's go on to the next question. Okay, so now we had a discussion about use of ginger on Pesach, and I don't know whether it was this year, but I said I know that we have a problem. It's mentioned that the Rebbe's Haggadah that they used to use ginger as ingredients of the charoses, and because of a chashash of chametz, it was stopped. So now I saw during the week, I saw that this is addressed in the Sefer Oitzim Minhagei Chabad, and he's quoting here from Reb Aryeh Leib Zivov. Reb Aryeh Leib Zivov was the Rav, as you see, Dinaburg, Dvinsk. He was a Talmud of Tzemach Tzedek. I remember Reb Yosef Goldberg, the Rosh Hashiva in Brnois, when he referred to the Ragachover, he would refer to him as Reb Yosha Dinaburger, because Ragachover became Rav in Dvinsk. He was the Malamokam of this Reb Aryeh Leib Zivov. This Reb Aryeh Leib Zivov, his Sefer was never published, and Reb Yeshua Monshein prepared from manuscript. He prepared this Sefer to be published, was never published. I just want to show you if you can see, I have in my hand a volume. It's called Sefer Sip. It's a memorial volume to Reb Yeshua Monshein,
And in their Sefer, I could see he talks about this project of the writings of Aryeh Leib Zivov. He has a manuscript, and the Sefer hasn't been published. So therefore, this following piece is probably not published anywhere else because the Sefer hasn't been printed yet. So Reb Aryeh Leib Zivov writes the following about Ingber, which Ingber is ginger, which people eat it on Pesach, and it's even written to mix it with charoises. However, nowadays it's been verified that in the places where they grow it, they cook it, and they cook it. And don't know. I tried to find out this word. Hamayim him al yok yokor, alayik yokor. I wrote to a cousin of mine who lives in Russia, in Smolensk, and he also wasn't able to establish, actually a son of Rabbi Shua Monshein, and he wasn't able to establish what those two words mean. At any rate, so they would take the ginger, and then they would take it and sprinkle on it flour, so that it shouldn't be noticeable that it's been cooked, because the way it grows naturally, it has a white dust like a flour. And I showed to the shopkeepers, when you take the ginger out of the barrels, you'll see at the bottom of the barrel there will be a powder which has fallen off from the ginger. And he also says that they sometimes will soak the ginger in strong alcohol, and that alcohol has fetches a good price. And then they take the ginger and they dry it and they sell it, and some put a flour on it. Therefore, Rab Zivov is saying, I tell people not to eat ginger on Pesach. And even b'diavad, if ginger was put into a food, if the ginger has on it this white dust, I tell them not to use the food, to destroy the food, and not to use the kalim. Ginger which doesn't have the white dust and doesn't have this white appearance, then I say if it's a major loss, they can leave it for after Pesach. Okay, so this is the writing of Reb Aryeh Leib Zivov. Achar Zman, writes Monshein, Nisparsema, I was missing a letter there, Hakchoshu l'chashash seh. This whole allegation that ginger would be treated with flour and alcohol has been debunked, if that's the right word. Ayidei mumche misore Moskva. Reb Chaim Berlin nosen ba'imun levirure dvorim me'en elu. Reb Chaim Berlin, he consulted with one of the government ministers in Moscow who debunked this whole thing, this whole allegation. So therefore now, if you start asking, does ginger now have a chashash chometz? So I'm just telling you, this is the history. Rav Zivov came up with this, and this is about 120 years ago, Talmud of Tzemach Tzedek, and therefore that seems to be the background of not using ginger on Pesach. To say that nowadays there is a chashash or isn't, I'm not going to comment. I'm just going to say that's the background of this minhag, not tea. Someone's asking, can I clarify about using garlic on Pesach? Okay, so it's what I have said in before is that b'shem Rav Yaakov Landau, of Rav Shalom, the Rav of Bnei Brak, that it's not there are communities which are, in principle don't use garlic on Pesach. In Lubavitch, it wasn't on principle. There may be families who do, some families who don't. Families who haven't been using, who consciously have been avoiding using garlic, if they want to use garlic, will have an issue of Hatoras Nedorim. That's as much as I've said. And I just want to add, I had this lady who once was very excited about this business of using garlic, and she late at night peeled about 12 cloves of garlic, and then she left them peeled overnight, and then she realized that you don't leave onions and garlic peeled overnight. She called me in the morning, what should I do with all this garlic? And I told her, I said, it looks like the Eibusha doesn't want you to use garlic on Pesach. Okay, let's move on. Now, someone sent me a few questions, including, what do you do with the spillover of the wine? When you make Kiddush, or, by Havdalah, usually once you've dipped your Havdalah candle, no one asks the question. And Eretz Yisrael, if you're in the year of Shemitah, you don't dip the Havdalah candle in the wine because you're not allowed to destroy if it's wine of Shemitah. You're not allowed to spoil Shemitah produce. But generally, what do you do with the wine, which is the spillover of the wine? So this is a Sikha from Tov Shin Mem Beis. So I'm going to go through the Sikha. So the Rebbe talks about, it's well known the minig, that when we fill up the wine, the cup for Kiddush and Havdalah, for benching, we fill up, it says Lashon Alkol Gedosha, that's Lashon in Shulchan Aruch. And there are different interpretations, but the way it's accepted in Chabad is that the wine should overflow a little bit. The reason is because of Siman Brocha, and it says in Gemara that in any house that wine doesn't spill like water, ain't by Siman Brocha. So the overflow is a Siman Brocha. So now the Rebbe says, I want to explain a detail. It says in Shulchan Aruch, there's 10 things which are mentioned about Kosher Brocha, and Hadocha, rinsing, Shtifa, inside, outside, Chai, Mole, and then it says Mole Kimashmoy. Shulchan Aruch, it says in Kufay Gimel, Mole means Mole al Kol Gdosav, it should be till the brim. Now then it says, if you're worried that it will overspill a Aviyas Baze and will be disgraced, and so then you can leave a little bit, not mamish to the brim, and so it's still called Mole if it's just until the brim, not mamish over. So according to Shulchan Aruch, it seems to be that if the wine is spilling over, it says the Lashon Yisbaze will be disgraced. So how come we are taking the minig of making the wine spill over? Yeah, again, Shulchan Aruch says that if you worry that the wine will spill over, the Yisbaze will be disgraced. So he says you'll do a little bit less. And here our minig is, I can make it spill over. So the Rebbe says, Shficha sheyesh ba b'shum bizoyin, when it talks about overspilling in a disgraceful way, is if it spills onto the floor. But if there's a dish underneath, then the wine doesn't get disgraced. And therefore, one should be particular to put a kli sholem, to put a healthy dish under the wine, under the cup of wine. And then when you hold the cup and it spills over, so then the spillover will go into the kli sholem, not like the spillover by the makis, by the Leila Seder, where there you put dafke a disgraceful, a broken keli. B'meila, since it's spilling over into a keli, the wine is not being disgraced. Let's read further. Avol adayin einei moving. What's going to happen here? When the bit of wine spills into the keli, you can't say you're disgracing the wine. It looks like he's saying that, I think it's very clear, that the overspill of wine is not used. So then, why does it not, again, beg the question of being disgraced? So the Rebbe answers, or is Levatola. So he answers, since it's for the purpose of Siman Brocha, and so therefore it's a tachlis ve'echroches b'yoyis Siman Brocha, therefore it's not Levatola chas v'shalom. So let's get that clear. There's bizoyon is one thing, and Levatola is another thing. The first thing, which is the Shulchan Aruch is sensitive to, is bizoyon. It spills on the floor as a bizoyon. So the Rebbe says you put a dish underneath, it avoids bizoyon. Then the Rebbe says, but if you're not going to use it, it's wasteful. To which he answers, it's wasteful and bizoyon is two separate things. There's disgrace and waste. You're not going to use it, it's wasteful. Here the Rebbe says, since it's for the purpose of bracha, therefore it's not wasteful. So there's many things which we do. We break cups by chasanis, and there's many other things which can be seen as wasteful. And we say, since for a purpose, it's not called wasteful. All right, so now, so if somebody asked me, is it a question of a Ruach HaTumah or something? I don't think it's a question of Ruach HaTumah. It's just that it seems to be that the part of the Siman Brocha is that it's not used. All right, someone is mentioning here, is there an Indian to have a silver crown? I mentioned in Havdalah in particular, Itur. Yes. So there are those, it says the Lashon Itur, that the Kosher Brocha tone Itur. So some say that the rim, which is visible by having it just a drop, the wine just a drop less than the brim, That's called the crown. And others say atribekoisis. You have little cups around it. That's how you Makai in the Indian of Itur. So that's a separate thing. So you ask you, why can't you drink it afterwards? It looks like, but I don't know clearly. But here the Rebbe is saying clearly that so just at least I know the facts. The reason I don't know. Okay, let's move on. Someone asked me also this week, why is it that we say Ketores after Musaf? Every day we say Ketores at the end of davening in Nusach Sfard, but on Shabbos and Yom Tov and Rosh Chodesh, we're saying Ketores, Peter Maktodes, we're saying after Musaf. But L'Chayre, you see Abai have Masada say the Hamarocha, you'll see that the Ketores is before Musaf. So after a lot of searching, I found it, which I could have found it right away. I looked in the right place. In Siman Kuf Lamed Beis, which is the dinim of the end of davening. So it talks about saying Ketores, and the difference between Ashkenaz and Sfard. In Ashkenaz, why don't they say Ketores every day? Because if you miss out one of the number of the Ketores, so then it has serious consequences. So in the weekdays, because you're in a rush to go to work, so they didn't say Ketores every day. It looks like the people of Sfard were less rushed to go to work. So therefore they would say the Ketores, and then with the minig of mentioned the Chidon, and the Rebbe was knowing to count the Ketores, as you should say, with your fingers, etc. Kol Ponim, so the Magen Avraham says here, why do we say it after Musaf? The Ketores is before Musaf. Perhaps the reason is lipoter midivrei Torah. Perhaps the purpose of saying Ketores after davening is to kind of to take leave from davening with divrei Torah. So we are saying the Ketores more as divrei Torah rather than as bringing a korban. And then he quotes also from the Ksovim, which is referring to the writings of the Arizal, Shatam lahavriach haklippus, is to drive away the klippus. Okay, so and if you want to find more reasons, so you've got the address. It's Erechaim Kuf Lamed Beis, and then you can take the Malachtim on Kuf Lamed Beis. You can find other reasons why Ketores is said after Musaf. Let's go on, and meanwhile, I'm just going to go back to the chats for a moment. I think that Rebbe used to pour from the base of Kos Shel Eliyahu back into the bottle. Okay, that I didn't know. Obviously, I wasn't there. Have seen sources. Someone's saying, I've seen sources and customs whereby Havdalah, one should specifically spill wine on the ground. Well, yeah, so then that's kind of in conflict with the Rebbe's point over here, that it's, some say that the Siman Bracha is that it spills on the ground. But obviously the Rebbe doesn't seem to be taking that view. He's saying that it's enough, it spills over to the plate is also enough, that it doesn't go into his zone. Right. Let's move on. Okay. Now, here I'm going to stir up a bit of trouble, and I apologize for the issue in advance. But here I have a very serious concern. And that's why I'm addressing it, even though it might cause trouble. When people are invited out for a Friday night or for a Yom Tov meal, where does the lady bench licht? Does she bench licht at where she's sleeping, or where she and her family are sleeping, or does she bench licht where she is having the meal? This question becomes more of a question for Yom Tov, as you'll see in a moment. Generally, if someone asks me on a regular Friday, where should we bench licht? Where we eat or where we sleep? So I will say, if you are the only one at the house, in other words, you're in an empty flat, empty house, you're the only ones there, so then you should light candles where you're sleeping. And but if you are staying with a family, and you're sleeping in with one family, and you're eating by another family. It's very common. People have. So this one has a spare room for the neighbor. The neighbor's children stay over. So if you are sleeping overnight in a house where there's a balabosta or a balabos who's lighting candles, then don't light there. Light where you're eating. And my svara for that is the following. We have two reasons for lighting candles for Shabbos. One is shaloy koshel be'etzav even. You shouldn't stumble over anything. The other one is to enhance the meal. If you are in an empty house, an empty flat, so you have a chiyuv to make it light there. That's your chiyuv, and you fulfill that chiyuv not only with the candles but with the electric lights. And that should be a davar borer, that whoever lights and woman lights candles for Shabbos has in mind also the electric lights, that the house shouldn't be dark. And although some of the lights are on hours earlier, some of the lights are switched on close to Shabbos, in the bathroom, etc. Those are also, so when you make the bracha, lahadlik neil shel Shabbos kodesh, you also have in mind the electric lights. So coming back to this couple who are in an empty flat, she lights the candles. Let's see, even if she leaves the house immediately to go to the hostess for the meal, but they've also switched on electric lights. So bracha is chal on that. So even if by the time they get home, the candles have gone out, but they fulfilled the mitzvah of hadlokas neiros with electric lights, and the bracha is not a bracha levaton. The problem is when it comes Yom Tov. Why should they make a bracha in the house where they're eating? So this has already been established that even if there are several people at the same table, several women at the same who are eating together, each one makes a bracha. And the reason is because we say that tois fis oira, tois for simcha, more light enhances the Shabbos meal. Therefore, where you're eating, you're lighting another candle is going to be also a mitzvah. You can make a bracha on that. Tois fis oira. Therefore, again, if she's staying in a house where the balabosta is lighting, for her to light there's no chiyuv to light because there is light at the table, there's light in the corridor because the balabosta is making a bracha on all the lights in the house. So what you're making a bracha at the table, you're not eating there. So you're making a toisus oira, you're not even having hana from it at all. Therefore, I say better in that case, make the bracha where you're going to have your Shabbos meal. When it comes Yom Tov going into Shabbos, like tomorrow night, it's Motzei Shabbos, and you're eating out. So to light the candles in your house at Motzei Shabbos, what time is Motzei Shabbos? Let's see here. About 8:30. You light 8:30 and 8:31 you're out the door. You come back, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, your candles are out. What do you make a bracha on? On the electric lights, you can't make a bracha because they were alight already. On the candles, you had no hana from them. So what's the benefit? And therefore, when it comes such a kviyas, with the second night of Yom Tov, or when Shabbos is going into Yom Tov, where there are electric lights which are on already the last 24 hours or more, then I would say, light your candles by Mokem Hachil. Light the candles where you're eating. This I have here from the Piskei Teshuvos in Simirei Samach Gimel. He talks about, he struggles with this problem also. Let's just bring it over here. Amadlikin Neirus, B'shloiv Mokim Suda, when there's Oich Hashmal, Tzorchi Rav Ketzed Mevorchim, and he goes through various options. Says make kiddush there and have a bit of mazonos or something. But if you have large enough candles that by the time you come back from your host, the candles will still be there and you can still have a cup of tea and a bit of something and have hanoah from the candles, no, okay. But if it's mamish that you're lighting the candles and going straight out of the house and you're going to come back, there's going to be out, and not only am I worried about you're not Mekayim the mitzvah, I'm worried about a bracha levatala. I'm worried about another thing. If you're not Mekayim a mitzvah, you're lighting candles on Yom Tov, you're making a fire, and it's not Mekayim a mitzvah. So I've got here, a lot of hesitations here. And I know I'm going to get some backlash on this because I know people don't follow, are not noyeg this way. But I think it's very important to and there's no loss to life by the mocking by your host. Right. Someone's suggesting if you switch on the lights, switch the lights with a time switch. Okay, fine. Let's move on. Okay. Someone asked me the following. Different topic altogether. He received a talus cotton, and I asked him by email, was it a cotton talus cotton or a wool talus cotton? But he was concerned about the fact that it's got an extra 2 corners by the neck. What's it called? The neck, the hole? I don't know what you call it exactly. But you know what I'm talking about, yeah?
Naples.
Okay, lapels. Okay, thank you. So the lapels have got corners. So it's got 4, instead of 4 corners, it's got 6 corners. Okay, so I reassured him it's not a problem. It says clearly in Shulchan Aruch that if you have a garment which has got 6 corners, you also put on tzitzis on 4 of the corners. So no question. We learn from Psukim that if a beggar's got 5 corners, you put 4 tzitzis on. But really, actually, I was excited to see that this is like a wool garment, and it's got this shape. I'll tell you why. Because years ago, my late mother, Allah Shalom, she would get a talus cotton, just a straight piece of wool, and she was very good with needlework, and so she would make the hole just as I wanted to. But nowadays, you can't get them, and now the standard talus cottons, talesim ktanim, we call them Chabad style because of the way the holes are made in diagonal, not like a tzere. So they come with a round hole, and I don't know where this round hole becomes minik Chabad. I remember years ago there was this very thick siddur called Oitzi Yerushalayim siddur, if you remember, or was it Minchas Yerushalayim? This very thick siddur, and there it had a diagram, and it says that the round hole has got to do from the Chazon Ish, etc. I don't know why it became standard in Chabad, but meanwhile here you have from the Alter Rebbe siddur. The gam nochin lizoy liyos shnei tzidei beis hatzavar lemalo eitzel hatzavar, that the 2 sides, the lapels by the neck, should be near the neck. Tchufim zelozeh, they should be closed to one another. Al yedei kshira b'meshiches, with ribbons, or al yedei krosim, with buttons. Ichdei sheyiyah hachozeh mechuzeh mamish, so that the chest should be properly covered, as written in Kisvei Arizal. So in Kisvei Arizal, he says you've got the talus cotton, talus godel. Talus cotton is called makiv dezor. Talus godel is called makiv hagodel. And the talus the zor is the what's the word again? I've forgotten the word now. Not the chest, no, the torso. The torso, it relates to zor, and so the talus cotton encompasses the torso, and the torso therefore is up till the neck, and so the talus cotton should really be up till the neck. Unfortunately, as I say, you can't get them. But here I was excited to see that you have here talus cotton which reaches up to the neck. So the only thing you have to do is to make it to muhuder, is to add some buttons or ribbons or something. Right. And in Chabad, no one will know the difference because you wear a shirt and top, and if you have a kushi, you also wear a tie. Different form of iskashus. Okay, let's move on. Cup of tea when you come to the candle. Someone's asking, do you need mezainis? Well, that's going to be a problem during Pesach. We don't make mezainis unless Achar Pesach. You can have a knedel, right? No, it doesn't have to be mezainis. I think if you're sitting by the candles and kind of enjoying the atmosphere. Fine. Okay, since I'm talking about talus cotton, I want to share with you also what I heard from Rabbi Gedalia Korf, who was one of the unfortunate victims of COVID. I don't know exactly when his yahrzeit is, but he around a year ago, and he told me this himself. It was a few months after the Frierdiker Rebbe passed away. He was one of the few individuals who came from Europe, from the refugees out of Russia, who managed to come to the Frierdiker Rebbe before Yud Shvat. So it was a few months after Yud Shvat, and the Rebbe, as in our Rebbe, called me in together with my colleague, Reb David Raskin, Allah Shalom. He called me into his room. The Rebbe was standing by the table, and on his desk was spread out the talus cotton, which belonged to the previous Rebbe, to the Frierdiker Rebbe. The Rebbe was holding a centimeter. He was holding a tape measure in his hand, and he, in front of us, he measures the Frierdiker Rebbe's Tal's cotton. He showed us that its width was 63 centimeters. And he wanted to tell us that the Frierdiker Rebbe did not rely on Reb Chaim Noah's minimal shear of Amor of 49 centimeters. And the Frierdiker Rebbe, he had a point of his Tal's cotton being 63 centimeters wide. Then the Rebbe took the tape measure and measured the length. And you could see that the length was twice 63 centimeters, which is 126 centimeters. This included the space where the hole for the neck in the middle of Tal's cotton. The Rebbe then measured from the front bottom edge of the Tal's cotton until the hole for the neck, and that measured the 49 centimeters as in the Amor of Reb Chaim Noah. So the Rebbe was saying like this: the overall measurements, he took the larger shear of 63 centimeters for Amor, but as far as the hole for the neck, there is a debate whether it's included in the shear of the Tal's cotton or not. And therefore, for the overall shear, he took the overall shear of the beged, he took the larger shear of 63 centimeters. But as far as the question of whether the hole is included or not, this he relied on the shear of 49 centimeters. Reb Gedalia, he told me he feels upset that that this has not become more well known, and he feels that the Rebbe called him in order to publicize it. And Poshet Mitzvah L'Kayim Divrei Hames. So I'm just using this opportunity to publicize it. And Bez Hashem, this is included in the forthcoming edition of the Siddur with Mara McCamus. Now, I had here a very distressed question that a boy had a small town on Shlichus, and they called in a barber to give the kids haircuts. And the two younger boys, the barber he messed their payers up totally. And so this boy is 15 years old, and he says, I can't do that. So they gave instructions, he put his hands in the way, and the barber would just cut around and not cut the payas at all. So now he has this very big payas, he had for a few months growth. And then the mother tried to do something to adjust him, but didn't do a very good job. Tati was very busy giving out matzah Erev Pesach because they don't have an Erev to give out on Shabbos, and he didn't have he didn't have a heter to give out on Shabbos. So now this boy it's now during Pesach, he's got these massive payas, and after Pesach he's going to go, or Rosh Chodesh he's going to go back to yeshiva somewhere in the United States, and he's embarrassed. He says, Tati, I'm not going back to yeshiva. They were looking the way I do. So now he becomes a big shayla. Can he have his payas sorted out that he should not be embarrassed to go back to yeshiva? That was the big shayla, and I was happy to be able to give the answer that he is allowed to have it adjusted. So here you have the first quote is from Dinim of Avelis, where if a person was sitting by a barber, and in the middle of his haircut, he was told that he has bereavement, and so the barber can finish it off. And the Meforshim say because of Kovod Habrius, a respect for human life, and therefore he shouldn't be embarrassed. And so that's in Hilchos Avelis. Then we have in the Sefer Sheikh Halamed Kilchosoi, talks about a person who started having a haircut before Yom Tov, and somehow the machine broke, and so he's now in the middle of Chalamed. So he's allowed to finish off the haircut in the middle of Chalamed, because of Kovod Habrius. He talks about even if it's a place let's say under your yarmulke, which is not going to be so noticeable. Even that he permits, even a Chalamed. If you have a heter to do so Chalamed, how much more so one can be matir to do so also during Sfira, especially until Rosh Chodesh. So therefore I was quite comfortable to say that he has a heter to Kovod Habrius, that he should be able to meet his friends and not be embarrassed, that they should be able to touch up the haircut. So that you should be okay. What is the time now? I think this is the last. So we have another minute or two. So I think the fact that we have half the number of participants as usual proves the point that Friday is not such a good choice for when to have the shir. And also, al pi halacha, if you're running on Friday, people, it says al pi halacha, Friday a person is torut. People are rushing, and in the Baba Kama you cause damage on Friday. Friday la halacha, people are busy and torut. And Baruch Hashem, we're creeping out of this pandemic, at least in this country. Baruch Hashem, people are feeling more comfortable to go out, and therefore to learn halacha b'yishuv hadas. So Bez Hashem, the shir will be on Thursday night, 8 to 9 p.m. And I know some people have got chavrusis and they've got shiurim, and so Bez Hashem, the recording will also be made available shortly afterwards, and we'll find ways of making easily available. And so each one al makoimo yove v'sholem, and I mean v'sholem in a gesundheit. And I wish you all a guten Shabbos, a guten Yom Tov, and an uplifting Mashiach Suda, and simcha al roishom tomid kol hayomim bebi as goyel tzedek b'mheru yameinu mamish. Kol tov.
Good Shabbos, good Yom Tov.
Good Shabbos, good Yom Tov.
Good Shabbos, good Yom Tov, Yasher Koyach Kodel.
Kol tov.